President Biden is pushing forward with his economic agenda as spending negotiations within his party continue. The president met with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer earlier to discuss the legislation. It was also one of the topics the president spoke about in a CNN town hall event last night. He also addressed other priorities such as safeguarding voting rights and lifting the debt ceiling, which are still in limbo.
There are certain things that are just sacred rights. One's a sacred obligation that we never going to renege on a debt. We're the only nation in the world. We have never, ever reneged on a single debt.
But when it comes to voting rights...
Voting rights is equally as consequential.
When it comes to voting rights, just so I'm clear, though, you would entertain the notion of doing away with the filibuster on that one issue? Is that correct?
And maybe more.
I want to bring in CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang, who is following the latest from the White House. Hi, Weijia. So back in July, the president said eliminating the filibuster would throw Congress into chaos and legislative work would not get done. So how significant were those remarks on the topic of the filibuster last night?
So what President Biden said last night is extremely significant because this is the farthest that he has publicly been willing to go to even talk about eliminating the filibuster, which, as you pointed out, in the past, he has very firmly been against. As a member of, the Senate himself for so many years, he talked about its usefulness and how it is a tool to get things done. And so now he is saying that he is open to, quote, fundamentally altering it. Now, he was pressed about what that meant. How can you fundamentally alter the filibuster without ending it altogether? And he was frank and said he wasn't sure how it would all work, but he did believe that something probably has to change because you are seeing so much polarization in Congress that they can't even decide whether to raise the debt limit, which of course is something they're going to have to tackle when the short-term spending bill runs out, and they're figuring out a way that the U.S. has to not default on its loans. Anyway, all that said, to answer your question, Tanya, it is really substantial that the president was willing to go there. I think it created more questions for him that we don't have the answers yet to. For example, does he mean getting rid of it altogether? And when he said that he would be open to it for other issues as well, in addition to voting rights, what are those other issues?
Right. And Weijia, what else did we learn about the latest negotiations over the reconciliation bill? Is the president putting a little more heat on some specific lawmakers?
Absolutely. He was very frank last night about how the two moderates in the Senate, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, are really holding things up. And I think that he was expressing some frustration while also being gentle about it, because obviously they are still in negotiations. But, I think it is difficult to see exactly where they're going to land on this. We are learning some bits and pieces. He confirmed a lot of what our Capitol Hill and White House team had already confirmed with regard to some of the specifics of the bill. For example, that, free college tuition for community college would likely be out of the picture, that paid family leave would probably be shortened to 4 weeks from what he wanted, which was 12 weeks. But the big thing, Tanya, is that he said, Kyrsten Sinema, does not want to raise a penny on the wealthy or corporations to pay for this bill. Of course, that's really important because his one red line has been saying that nobody who makes under $400,000 will have to pay a single penny to pay for this bill. And he was really banking on those corporate tax raises as well as taxing the wealthy, the 1%, to pay this bill. And now that he's admitting that is unlikely because Sinema has said so, it's hard to know how they will pay for this and still maintain the initial promise that there won't be taxes raised. And so I think that's a piece that they're trying to figure out. They are still expressing optimism, including the House Speaker after having breakfast with the president here this morning, saying that she believes they're about 90% there.
And Weijia, the Biden administration did walk back some of the president's comments from last night on using the National Guard to alleviate supply chain issues. What did he say?
He said that is an option that is being floated, that he is thinking about it, and the administration is as well. But then today, White House officials pointed out, as for clarification, to say that's up to the states. They have to essentially ask for it and request it. And right now, they're not funneling any of those requests. So perhaps the president meant that, they would be at the ready if the asks come in, but so far that's not the case.
All right. Well, Weizhou Zhang at the White House, thank you so much.
Sure.